So when we look at the environmental influence on behavior, there's a lot going on. Now, we've already talked about the idea of negative and positive taxis. So if it's a negative taxis, you're going to move away. If it's a positive taxis, you move toward. And this could be anything: food sources, shelter, predators you could be moving away from, and so on. But we've all seen the phenomenon where the moth continues to try to fly into the light at night. There are lots of theories about this. One is that the moth is after prey items. So he's hunting, and the other little bugs are drawn in by the light and the warmth, so the moth goes to the light to feed. But we've also seen the moth kind of bang his head off of these lights, right? So there's another theory that the moth is actually attracted to the buzzing noise that fluorescent lights and other light bulbs will put out. And that buzzing noise signals, they think, that these are mating colonies potentially, and so the moth gets confused and thinks he's going to find a mate. Kind of sad, right? But showing us again that the stimulus is so important, and the interpretation of that stimulus is so important as well. Now, you have an internal clock, right? You have a decent sense of what time of day it is because you are following a particular set of patterns in your day. Now, when we look at a human's normal day, we're very fixed on schedule, right? And it's not always our schedule. We have to be fixed into class schedules and work schedules and whatever's going on for us. But what we want to look at is take away your calendar. How do you know that it's daytime? Well, that's kind of silly, right? The sun's probably out, potentially, right? But we also look at not only whether or not the sun's out, but how long is the sun out? Okay. What is the light cycle for the day? How many hours of light? How many hours of dark? These things are really important. Temperature. All of these things are going to help you know what time it is and help your body to set itself to that particular clock. When we look at these kinds of biological rhythms or circadian rhythms, the sunlight is a huge clue for us as far as regulating and keeping on track with the Earth's rotation. Now, we look at the Earth's rotation being about 24 hours, right? Okay. But we also look at the fact that without that, your circadian rhythm actually puts you on about a 24.2-hour day. In some cases, some individuals are actually on a 26-hour day in their brains. Their brain wants them to be on a slightly longer cycle, but because of scheduling, you're forced into this 24-hour day. They've done lots of experiments with college students based on this, because it turns out that college students, which might not surprise you, would actually prefer to be up during the night and sleep all day long. So they've done some very interesting studies that we'll get into more later. Other cues are tides. Now, you may not be so regulated by tides, but natural organisms are, right, in the environment. And then phases of the moon. We've already talked about the importance of phases of the moon in reproduction of some of the aquatic and ocean life. But these things are major when it comes to things like migrations in populations. So how do sea turtles actually migrate? They cross the entire Pacific Ocean, about 7,000 miles, at a whopping 1 mile an hour. How do they stay on track? Well, it's not only sea turtles. We look at gray whales, birds, monarch butterflies, songbirds. All of these things that migrate are really driven by environmental cues like sunlight and sound. We are actually finding more now geographical features and even man-made features like buildings are becoming very important on coastlines for the animals to know how to migrate and where to go. So back to our sea turtles for a minute. What they wanted to see is, moving at a whole 1 mile an hour for 7,000 miles, are you really just drifting? So what they did was, so the black line is our turtle, and the red line is a buoy, or a drifter. So all they did was when the turtles start leaving their nesting beach in South Africa, they set out these drifters. So the turtle line, you can see, follows along and goes down around the kind of the Cape of South Africa here, gets a little tangled up down here at the bottom, and then eventually gets on his way. So why didn't he just go straight? The ocean currents down there are not going to allow that. He's going to have to drift a little bit. He's going to get forced by the currents. He's not that strong of a swimmer. So when they release the drifters, or the buoys, these red lines, you see it follows almost the exact same track, gets gobbled up down here, the same place our turtle did, and then moves along and eventually gets on course. So by this, you might have initially say, well, the turtle's just drifting along, right? Well, I would argue that the turtle actually knows what he's doing, because look at the timeline, okay? The turtle gets to this point by the 18th of May. The drifter doesn't get down here until the end of November. So 6 months later. So it took the drifter or the buoy 6 months longer to get to the same point than the turtle. So it's not that the turtle's just drifting. There is method to his madness, but he is going to use the currents when he can, and certainly not fight against the currents when he can't.